Hey everyone, Will here. So for today's video, we are going to be analyzing the 8th presidential election in American history. That means we're going to be going over all aspects of this race, including the context of the race, the candidates in the race, and the results of the race. So without further ado, let's begin. So the 8th presidential election in American history took place from November 1st, 1816 to December 4th, 1816, spanning over the course of 33 consecutive days. Similar to the previous presidential elections in American history, the telegraph was still not invented yet, which made it difficult to transmit information across the country effectively. So the 8th presidential election in American history saw a small number of competitive candidates compete for the presidency after incumbent President James Madison chose to step down from office. Madison's decision to step down from office was inspired by the two-term limit precedent that was set by President George Washington and later followed by President Thomas Jefferson. This term limit precedent would last until 1940, when incumbent President Franklin Delano Roosevelt won a third term in office. President James Madison's second term in office was heavily defined by the United States' success in the War of 1812, which made Madison a very popular politician. This election took place at the start of the era of good feelings, a time of increased American patriotism that helped overcome the strong political divide between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Meanwhile, as the era of good feeling swept across the country, the Federalist Party was quickly losing its popularity. The unpopularity of the Federalist Party could be attributed to the Hartford Convention, a series of conferences taking place between December 15, 1814 and January 5, 1815. During these conferences, many major Federalist Party politicians openly discussed their opposition to the War of 1812. Many within the Federalist Party opposed the war effort, as they feared that the British would launch a naval assault on the city of Boston. Unfortunately for the Federalist Party, opposition to the War of 1812 became extremely unpopular among many Americans after Major General and future President Andrew Jackson scored a major U.S. victory at the Battle of New Orleans. Additionally, some Federalists even spoke about seceding from the Union, which caused even more Americans to disassociate themselves from the Federalist Party. Although James Madison originally campaigned on the idea of limiting the power of the federal government, he strengthened federal powers by signing a bill that would officially create the Second National Bank. Madison also implemented the Protective Tariff of 1816, which placed a 20 to 25% tax on all foreign goods. In many ways, James Madison was governing in the same style as a traditional Federalist would. This further contributed to the internal collapse of the Federalist Party. In 1816, the Federalist Party chose not to nominate their own major party candidate. This essentially cleared the way for the eventual Democratic-Republican nominee to win the presidency. Meanwhile, the Democratic-Republican Party was largely divided over who they wanted to nominate for president. Although U.S. Secretary of State James Monroe received support from incumbent President James Madison and former President Thomas Jefferson, some Democratic Republicans were skeptical of electing another Virginian to the presidency. 3 out of the 4 presidents elected to office had been from Virginia, those presidents being George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. This trend became referred to by many people as the Virginia Dynasty. New York Governor Daniel D. Tompkins and Pennsylvania Governor Simon Snyder ran for the Democratic-Republican nomination for president, but chose to withdraw before the nominating caucus. Many Democratic Republicans also wanted to nominate Speaker of the House Henry Clay, while others favored nominating newly minted war hero Andrew Jackson. However, both of these candidates ultimately decided not to run in the 1816 presidential election. Likewise, U.S. Secretary of Treasury William H. Crawford considered formally entering the race, but never officially announced his candidacy, since he wanted to maintain favor with James Monroe. Nevertheless, Crawford's supporters still posed a major threat to Monroe's candidacy. In the end, James Monroe ended up winning the Democratic-Republican Congressional Nominating Caucus, narrowly winning the nomination against Crawford by a total vote tally of 65 to 54. Meanwhile, the Democratic-Republican Party ended up nominating Daniel D. Tompkins to be their vice presidential nominee. While the Federalist Party never formally nominated candidates for the White House, many Federalist voters ended up supporting New York Senator Rufus King for president and former Maryland Senator John Eager Howard for vice president. It is very important to note that Indiana was not officially a state when voting for the 1816 election started in November and December. It was decided that although Indiana was still a territory during the election, the state's citizens would be allowed to vote in the election. The final results of the election came in as expected by the majority of Americans. Coming in first place were both James Monroe and Daniel D. Tompkins of the Democratic-Republican Party, with a total of 183 electoral votes. Coming in second place was Rufus King, with a total of 34 electoral votes. John Eager Howard came in third place with a total of 22 votes. James Ross received a total of 5 votes, John Marshall received 4 votes, and Robert Goodloe Harper received 3 votes. This election was important for ultimately showcasing how the Federalist Party would eventually demise into obscurity. It is also important to note that James Monroe became the second man named James in a row to be elected president, officially succeeding James Madison. Even today, the first name of James is the most popular first name of presidents in American history. The 6 U.S. presidents with the first name of James include James Madison, James Monroe, James Polk, James Buchanan, James Garfield, and James Carter, who is commonly known as Jimmy Carter. In terms of the popular vote, James Monroe and Daniel D. Tompkins resoundingly defeated Rufus King and other Federalist candidates, winning 68.2% of the popular vote. Meanwhile, Rufus King won 30.90% of the popular vote. The remaining 0.9% of the popular vote went towards other candidates. With only 1.86% of the population voting, a lot of the country was prohibited from voting, including almost all African Americans, women, and non-landowners. At the same time, only 10 of the 18 states selected electors through using a method of popular vote. Thank you for checking out our video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more additional content. If you have any ideas for a future video topic, please leave a comment and let me know what you would like to see me cover next. I'm really hoping to grow this channel and provide you all with more content in the future, and your support means the world to me. Thanks, everyone.